How we doing, everybody? This is Old Papa G, and today I'm going to give you guys a review for Marvel's Avengers game. I probably put in about 15 hours, 12 to 15 hours on this game, and I really pretty much enjoyed every minute that I played. There are a couple flaws with the game, and we're going to go over all the things that make it good and what makes it bad in the end. So, let's get into it. So let's get the more boring technical stuff out of the way first. So here's the map where you pick your story missions and your side missions. So when you pick the map, there's different terrains that you could be on. For example, there's the Arctic, and then there's like the mountain range. When you're picking different terrains and different environments, your gear could actually affect you to help you be better on the frosty maps. So here now you're looking at the skill tree. As you can see, there's primary, specialty, and mastery. Primary is just your basic move upgrades like light attacks, heavy attacks, range, and then your ability. So when you're looking at the specialty, that covers your special moves, which everybody has their own distinct special. And then you have mastery, which doesn't come in until you're level 15 as a hero, because there's power levels and hero level, and your hero level has to be level 15, which takes a lot of time, and even after 15 hours of play, I didn't get that much. So it's really all percentage based, so it'll increase like percentage of damage per moves. It's nothing really that you need in the end, but it's good for your end game play and your end game content. So a few seconds ago, you were able to see Hulk and Hulk's gear that he was wearing. So you could upgrade and dismantle old gear in order to make your gear better, and you could also get rid of all the stuff that you don't need to get resources in order to upgrade gear and make it more efficient to you. So for me personally, I didn't really do any upgrading of my gear until I was closer to end game. I was probably on the last two bosses when I finally decided, okay, it's time for me to start upgrading my gear and really put a hurting on these bosses. And the reason why is because I was only getting commons, greens, and blues, so rares, uncommon, because there's no need to upgrade those gears because it's really not going to be used in your end game. So I really wanted to make sure that I had either a legendary or an epic to start upgrading my gear. Otherwise, it's really pointless and you're wasting your resources on gear that you're never going to use, and then you're going to have to go back and rerun missions over and over and over again, which is really boring. Like, it's not ideal to have to go back and do all the stuff that I already did. I was really a saver, and that way my end game content was much easier. I didn't have to go back, and I could just upgrade the epics that I was getting from the final moments of the game. So now, as you're watching the combat, it feels as smooth as it looks, which sometimes is uncommon. A lot of these games, when they show the preview to the game, the combat system looks great and all stuff like that. But then when you actually play it, it feels very clunky. It doesn't really feel as smooth as it should. This game feels very, very good when you're playing it. Every character has a unique skill set and different abilities. Each character also feels unique. So, for example, Hulk is big, yet he's still elusive, which is an unusual dynamic for a lot of games. Most of the time, your heavy guy and your strength guy also is slow. But honestly, he felt really, really quick. There's a lot of moments where I was getting in good dodges while being a big guy. So it was really nice to see them implement different things that aren't in other games. Um, but a knock that I do have to say with the combat system is that the lock-on system was horrible. I honestly didn't even use the lock-on system for the entire game, but sometimes I felt like it would have been nice if the lock-on system was good when there was enemies that were really far away and I wanted to use my ranged weapons. Like, for example, Black Widow is really good at close combat, but she's also really good from far away too because she has dual-wielding pistols, and you could also upgrade those pistols to make them automatic and stuff like that. Same thing with Iron Man. Iron Man has a blaster, like a photon blaster, but he also has a beam that you could switch back and forth. So it would have been ideal for the enemies that stick back and fly in the air, like those drones right there, to have a more efficient lock-on system. So that's like really the only knock that I have about the whole combat system. Other than that, it really does run smoothly and it's very nice and it feels great while you're doing it. So the game doesn't have an open world, but when you go into certain missions, more than likely side missions, not as much story missions. You do get to fly around and you get to explore different parts of the map if you wanted to do, like, I guess you could say, mini side missions. They're like the side mission. And characters like Iron Man and Thor, their flight system really does feel nice, and it seems like they did a lot of work on it because Iron Man really flows like a plane. The flight system is very, very smooth. Not that Thor's is bad. Thor's is good too, but it just feels different. Iron Man, you could tell that they put a lot of time in. Same thing with Hulk and Miss Marvel. When they jump around, that's how they get around. So when you jump in the air, the second that you hit the floor again, you hit X or A, whatever console that you're playing on, and it does an immediate jump again, just like Hulk in the movie. I don't know if who's ever seen the first Hulk movie. The way Hulk gets around, he doesn't just run. He literally leaps and leaps and leaps and grabs on walls. That's what they implemented in this game, and they did an excellent job doing it. It feels exactly how the movie had it, and I think they did an excellent job when it came to taking moments from the movie and even taking moments from Marvel vs. Capcom, because they took combat moments from those games and implemented them into this game, and I think that was a really nice touch. Okay, so now here comes some pretty big knocks on the game. I was just really hyping it up, and it seems like it's all fun and dandy, but here are some pretty crucial things that I personally hated. So, a lot of the boss fights ended up being really robots or stuff that really isn't in the comics, which was kind of a disappointment. The only real boss fight that they had from the comics was Abomination, Taskmaster, and obviously the main villain that everybody knows is MODOK. But 3 other boss fights were just different types of robots or warplanes, and to me that was really a disappointment. When you have games like Spider-Man and Batman, they really did a good job putting in as many supervillains from the movies and from the comics into the game. This didn't really try to go that route. They tried to do it their own way, and to me that's actually a really big knock because I would have liked to seen other Avengers villains. I'm not saying they had to implement everything. Obviously, since this game's main villain was MODOK, Thanos shouldn't be in it, but it would have been nice to have, even if it was side missions with Ultron or just something different, instead of me fighting a warplane as the second to last boss in the game. To me, that's really a big knock. I was kind of disappointed with that. I was hoping to fight other supervillains that I thought were really cool to have in the movies and in the comics. So, 2 other things that kind of go hand in hand that I find to be a big knock as well is the game was really short. Not including the side missions, I finished the main story in 9 hours. Now, for a game that was postponed twice and had a lot of hype, and it does look great and it feels great, and if they put all that time into making the game flow and making the combat system really, really nice, that's cool. But I would have preferred them to even postpone it again and just add another 5 hours worth of story content into the game. Because for me to spend $65 after tax and beat it in 9 hours while watching all the cutscenes, I did not skip the cutscenes. Just felt like a really big loss for me, and it was really a disappointment. Now, that would have been countered if the end game content and side missions would have been really, really good. But again, it was not at the end of the day. Their endgame content is really just rerunning the same missions over and over and over again to get better gear and to level up your power level. So, to me, that's really just pointless in the end, because what am I getting this extra gear for if I'm not going to fight like a boss in the end? I'm just going to run a harder side mission. It just seems like it's all pointless in the end, and to me that's also another really big disappointment. But at the end of the day, I did really enjoy the heroes. I think they did a good job picking the staple Avengers characters and putting in a couple new ones like Miss Marvel, and even Black Widow isn't really an original, but I think she was a nice added touch because she does give a completely different dynamic to the other heroes, and I actually really enjoyed playing her. If I had to rate the heroes for the combat, how they play, and just the enjoyability, not necessarily how good they were, but just the enjoyability of playing them, I would rank Hulk 1, then Captain America, then Black Widow, then the final 3 would be Iron Man, Miss Marvel, and Thor.
That's not necessarily a knock on Thor. I just felt the other guys were done a lot better. He's still fun to play, but the other ones were just done really, really nicely. So the final knock that I have for this game, and to me, this actually is a really, really big deal. You're unable to switch to other heroes on your squad. And this would have been really, really easy to implement considering the D-pad is essentially meaningless. Games like Dragon Age or even Marvel Ultimate Alliance on the Switch, when you would hit up, down, left, right on the D-pad, it would switch to a different hero. Now, the majority of this game, you get to request a companion. So if I'm picking Hulk, I could have Iron Man, Thor, and Black Widow on my team helping me out. That's also what they have in the multiplayer, but real people fill those roles. So you would assume in the story, if I hit up on the D-pad, I could switch to another character. To me, that's a really, really big, big mistake for them. And it was also really needed. So, for example, on the fourth boss, the Warbot, I picked Hulk for this mission. Um, there was a point where I needed to shoot higher objects. Now, Hulk obviously doesn't have too much ranged ability. He does have something that you could pick up and throw rocks, but it would have been very, very nice to switch to Iron Man or even switch to Black Widow. Instead of me throwing rocks, a simple switch to one of those two would have been really beneficial. And to me, that was really a big mistake by them, especially that other games have done this, so it's not like it's unknown territory. They could have easily implemented this, especially that those companions are already there fighting with you. How much more work would it have really been to just been able to switch over to that character? And unfortunately, when it came to the gear system of this game, I think they did do a good job with, the upgrading and the dismantling to give you better gear and give you more resources. That way you didn't have to repeat the same mission over and over again, which higher difficulty missions gives you better gear, by the way. I know I didn't mention that earlier, but if you put up the difficulty to brutal, you're more likely to get an epic or a legendary than you would be if you did it on normal or even hard mode. But the stat gear doesn't change your appearance at all. They have a whole separate category called cosmetic gear. And to me, that was another big loss because it is nice to have gear that gives stats. But if you already have a cosmetic gear option in the game, it would have been nice to have an option to switch the way your guy looks from that stat gear instead of me having to go to the cosmetic gear change and switch it up from there. Now, I know it sounds like I just went on a tirade and a rant at the end there, knocking the game, bashing the game, and things that they didn't do. But believe it or not, overall, I actually find this game to be very, very enjoyable. That's why I was disappointed that it wasn't as long, that it was only 9 hours for the story. Because to me, the game really is about the gameplay and the content that you get while you're playing, and it runs smoothly. So that's the most important part. So I don't want you to think the other things that I was knocking it on makes it a bad game. I actually truly enjoyed it. So here's the pros and cons and the verdict that I give it. Like I said earlier, the combat is fluent. It feels smooth. The moveset resembles the movies and other video games. Each character feels distinct. The gear system, although I did knock it with the cosmetic thing, I do like that you could dismantle other pieces of gear. The cutscenes are well done. The graphics in it are pristine. They did a really nice job. But the cons, like I said earlier, not enough comic supervillains. I find that to be a really, really big disgrace. The side missions feel meaningless. Way too short, like I just went over. Terrible lock-on system for the combat, which is the only knock when it comes to the combat. And unable to switch to other heroes during the combat, which to me is a really big letdown. So that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed the review. I know it's a couple days late, but to me, I get the game when it comes out, unlike these big companies, so it takes me a little bit to get all the content together and to put my thoughts together. So if you did enjoy the video, hit like, hit subscribe. I will be making other reviews for other games, and you could also check out all my highlight videos for the game. Some of them are actually really good, and I enjoyed making the highlight clips for this game. Thank you guys for tuning in.